What is my
Why
life
am I
about?
here?
Why is your life
What is the
about?
purpose of life?
What's going on?
Where am I
Why
going?
am I
What
here?
happens when I die?
Why is there anything at all?
What is reality?
What is reality?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
These are the questions. Reality ultimately comes down to our experiences.
Has had successful answer.
Thought about what thoughts are made of. Is there a substance of thought?
This is a dream that I'm dreaming. Just as in a dream, you dream different characters can emerge and come out to you and talk to you and meet you and so forth. It's possible to go to another level of dreaming where you can become each of the characters that you dream.
Go backward and
Who
forward.
could you be if you weren't in your body? Well, would time matter at that point, or did we just solve it? Would time go backwards? Could we go
We
backwards?
can go backward and forward and forward in time.
Time is relative.
Goes backwards in time, and then forward in time to
Time was not
bring
absolute.
quantum information.
Time reversal symmetry.
Of course, we can go backward and forward in time.
Generators occurred when it was really
out of quantum field existing simultaneously.
The actual event of experience.
There literally are different worlds in which we live. There's the macroscopic world that we see. There's the world of our cells. There's the world of our atoms. There's the world of our nuclei. These are each totally different worlds. They have their own language. They have their own mathematics. They're not just smaller. Each is totally different, but they're complementary. Because I am my atoms, but I am also my cells. I'm also my macroscopic physiology. It's all true. They're just different levels of truth. The deepest level of truth uncovered by science and by philosophy is the fundamental truth of unity. At that deepest subnuclear level of our reality, you and I are literally one.
This gradually led into some notions that there was an invisible connection between everything. Physicists give this a name. They call it entanglement.
As Einstein put it, he didn't believe that quantum mechanics could be true because it required that there be spooky action at a distance.
That's why Einstein hated quantum mechanics. I mean, he said exactly that if quantum mechanics is true, then there is no more science. The famous thought experiment in a paper written by Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen in the 1930s, which drew out, it was an attempt to defeat quantum mechanics. It was an attempt to show that quantum mechanics was ludicrous. They very, very cleverly drew out one of the implications, which was not appreciated at the time, which was that if a particle, you can arrange for two particles to be created simultaneously, like a particle and its antiparticle. And you shoot them off in opposite directions. But they're in a superposition. It's two particles, but they're in a superposition. And they're in a superposition such that one state is this one up and the other down, and the other state is the reverse, this one up and this one down. And those are its two states, and it's in both of those states simultaneously. So it's a so-called two-particle state. It isn't that it has four states, it only has two states, this and this. Now something comes along and bumps the left-hand one and causes it to go into one of its two possibilities. It has two possibilities, either up or down. Let's say it goes up. Well, then it means that the other one must be down. And these particles can be 3 feet apart, or 2 miles apart, or in two different galaxies. And yet their states will be instantaneously correlated. So in that very specific sense, the question as to whether there's a kind of feedback between quantum events and matter itself, the uncertainty is that it's tighter than a feedback loop. It's that fact is simply woven into the fabric of the entire universe, of every material bit of the universe. Anytime there's a superposition, and superpositions are happening all the time, those superpositions are correlated with untold other superpositions, and when a superposition collapses over there, it collapses simultaneously, God knows where else.
Does God know?
He's probably the only one who really does.
Spooky action at a distance. That was his term. And what he meant is that when we have our ordinary sense of the way that the fabric of reality is, it seems like these two places are absolutely in space, they're separate, and never the twain shall meet. But in fact, it's not true. At some deeper level that we can't see with our eyes very clearly, two places in space are the same. They are co-located, coexisting. So if we imagine that common sense, the way common sense literally meaning that your senses tell you about the world, if that's the way the world is actually constructed, then things like psychic and mystical experience don't make any sense at all. Because the whole point about psychic and mystical experience that makes them strange is the sense that there's some kind of connection between what's going on inside your head and things elsewhere in space and in time. So what this view of quantum mechanics provides is a way of framing what these strange experiences are like. And it reframes it from somehow magically information is getting inside my head from signals or forces or something into a different view, which is that in a sense your head, yes, is here, but it's also spread out. It's spread out through space and time.
What I think happens in near-death experiences, and maybe in death also, is that prior to that, while the brain's functioning, metabolism is occurring, the quantum coherence and quantum computation is being driven by the metabolism. When that ends, when the blood stops flowing, the quantum information leaks out to the universe at large because it exists in the Planck scale. It exists at the most fundamental level. Even during normal consciousness, it's occurring at the most basic level of the universe, but the Planck scale, the fundamental level, between our ears in the brain. But when the coherence is lost, it kind of leaks out to the universe at large. But it doesn't dissipate entirely because of entanglement, and plus the universe is probably holographic, so it remains with a phase relationship and can persist, at least at a subconscious dream-like state outside the body.
Spread out through space and time. And so when I'm able to get a telepathic impression from somebody at a distance, it's not because I somehow jumped out there and got it, but because at some deep level, my head and the other person's head are co-located.
We become entitled all the time when we communicate telepathically. Those experiences are so striking. I literally can read your thoughts if I become entangled with you. And such things happen. There are distant viewing experiments. There are even experiments now that you are seeing light flashes and your brain potential picks up the signature of those light flashes, what is called evoke potential, that can be measured in an EEG machine connected to your brain. And I am sitting over there, no light flashes, I cannot see you, and still my brain potentials, because I am correlated with you in terms of intention, I intend to be directly communicative with your experiences. That intention produces me, gives me the capability of simultaneously having the similar brain potential in my brain. It was first done by Jacobo Greenberg at the University of Mexico and now repeated by Peter Fenwick in London.
So let's say you have interested in this notion of entangled minds, entangled bodies. How would you demonstrate that in the lab? The way that we do it is we take two people and we simply ask them to keep each other in mind. We entangle their minds by asking them to do so. Just keep each other in mind. It's the mental equivalent of a physics experiment where you're entangling people. Then you wire them both up physiologically. So you might measure the heart rate on both of them, brain waves, skin conductance. You measure what's happening physiologically. Then you separate them into two places so that no ordinary form of sensory leakage can pass between them. So they can't interact then anymore by conventional means, as is done in a physics experiment. And now you do the equivalent of poke one of them and see if the other one flinches. And if it turns out that you can poke that person and that person flinches as a result, or at the right time, that's a way of demonstrating that they are still entangled even though they are no longer in the same place. What we're looking at is the brainwave. This is the raw brainwave electroencephalogram. This is skin conductance level, and this is respiration. There we go. It's going to run all by itself now.
They had wired me up and locked me in this room, a massive multi-ton Faraday cage used by the military to isolate sensitive defense computers. The shielded room was riding on springs to further eliminate all sonic, vibrational, and electromagnetic interference. Meanwhile, Mark sat in another room watching a monitor. When my picture flashed on, he was to focus on me. Computers collected our unconscious responses to see if somehow, some way, we were entangled.
You can see when the sending occurs, there's a big arousal effect here. And this is the sending side, and this is the receiving side. So what we're looking for is on this side, a response. It's possible that that is a response. I'm pulling the data from these computers into this one where I'll be able to do the analysis. We ran a session with a sender and receiver. The sender is the red line, the receiver is the blue line. Beginning of the stimulus is here at 100 and the end is at 200. So what we're looking at is 10 seconds before the stimulus itself, and then 10 seconds after the stimulus in each case. So here we're finding the skin conductance relaxing and then meandering. The stimulus occurs and there's a big reaction in the sender, which is what we would expect. And what interestingly, here's the receiver relaxing, the stimulus occurs and suddenly starts relaxing a lot quicker and gets to the end of the period and stops relaxing. So this is somewhat unusual in that you wouldn't expect skin conductance to suddenly drop. But actually, I did an analysis to see whether this is a meaningful drop, and it turns out that it is. Significantly faster drop than you would expect by chance. So that's kind of unusual. So on average, I would say that looking at this one session with two people, it looks like the receiver is responding to what the sender was trying to do, to mentally connect. In a large-scale experiment, we would do many sessions like this. We might be doing 30 or 40 sessions like this and then combine all of the data together to see whether we're dealing with something which is true on average. But that's the result of this experiment.
A colleague of mine, Alex Wendt, is a sociology professor at Ohio State University, and he's writing a book on the premise that quantum consciousness exists and there's subconscious quantum entanglement between people. And if that's the case, then it also exists among groups of people, societies, governments, politics, and so forth. And the implications of that for this subconscious quantum entanglement interactions among people and groups of people has profound implications on the way the world runs, on the way society and governments and politics go on.
If we claim, for example, based on research, that group meditation lowers crime, prevents terrorism, even stops open warfare in war-torn areas, which is absolutely true every time, that's such important research. It needs to be done again and again, published again and again, presented again and again. So I'm a little bit more involved now with the application of the knowledge of unity, how that applies to life, how it can be accessed through meditation and harnessed and utilized through group meditation.
At the end of Entangled Minds, I take 5 or 6 classes of experiments that I've created or that I've analyzed to come up with a single number of the odds against chance for telepathy in the conscious state, in the dream state, for entangled minds and bodies, for mind-matter interaction, for those classes of experiments, which is roughly 1,500 experiments. And the overall figure is 10 to the 104 to 1. So that's a big number. I mean, at some point, you have to say, well, the evidence from these experiments is so large against chance that chance as an explanation is simply not viable.
The difference between ignorance and enlightenment is ignorance always uses reality for a predictable outcome. So no one in our life is ever the love of our life. No one in our life is ever the angel in our life. No one in our life is ever the bad person in our life. No one. It's only how we react to predictable emotions that we are addicted to.